Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to Stone by Stone. I am your host, Andrew Swanson, and I am very, very pleased to be joined here digitally by my new, very good friend, Patrick Infurna. Thank you so much, Patrick, for being here.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
Absolutely. For those of you who don't know, many of you probably do at this point, Patrick is one of the co-founders of Vermont Green FC, a recent national champion in USL 2. And just the darling of American soccer for the last several months. So I'm very, very excited to have you on the show, Patrick. Thank you so much for being here. And yeah, I think we're gonna have a fun time talking about the game a little bit today.
Totally. Yeah, like I said, it's always nice to talk with people who are kind of building in the same direction for the game in this country and building in their communities, and that's why I'm happy to be here with you all.
Awesome, man. Yeah. And you're a person that I've followed for a long time through your journey in the game. We here in Chicago have a lot of kind of people from the arts and a lot of creativity going into the game these days, which is something that I've seen from your career a ton. And something I wanted to ask you a little more about is stuff that I don't know anything about really, which is sort of like how you came to the game and your upbringing a little bit. Like essentially like what's the first thing that kind of got you here? From your life that you said, okay, I'm just now beginning to drift towards this game with a ball at the center of it.
Yeah, no, totally. I feel like I've had to tell this story a few different ways, and I feel like I'm telling it differently every time. It's funny. Like I think like I grew up playing soccer at extremely low level, extremely low. And yeah, that's like the original love of the game was playing it. But what really sort of, I guess, propelled me into like a career and like a kind of a deeper interest in the game was sort of like what you're saying, which is like original sort of falling in love with like the culture around the game, which I think is, again, like in our collective world is I think a pretty universal driver. I think like this is kind of the difference between a lot of people working in the amateur game and people working in the pro game is what's driving people. And I think the cultural side of it, and just falling in love with like what soccer can be in an all encompassing thing outside of like the 90 minutes. That's like kind of the short version of where I sort of fell into this game in the way that I have. Obviously, I um, one of my first jobs out of college, I was working for Boca Juniors. They had, yeah, I was studying in Argentina for a while, and they had,
That's a pretty cool first job, Patrick.
yeah, yeah, it definitely sounds cool, and it was a good time. But it was a bit of a chaotic project at the time. They were trying to build an office in Brooklyn, and loved the people I worked with, but it was a wild like year or so. But I eventually had then moved on to Copa 90. Been working again, like sort of like in the media side, trying to tell these documentaries, tell these stories about fan culture and the culture around the game. Um, and that was like my real passion around these things. Like I think telling, I obviously love the game, and I'm obsessed with it, but I really like what keeps me coming back is fan stories. And I think fan stories and club stories, stories like yours, people growing this game for sort of these, I guess, not alternative reasons, but with alternative styles and alternative passions. And I think that's what is yeah, just keeps me coming back, and sort of also what drove the vision behind Vermont Green, which again, as you were saying, um, we really see this club as like as an art project as much as a football club, and I think those two things are not like an either or one takes from the other. It's like it's two engines that drive the same sort of motion. So yeah, I guess that's my story.
Great answer, man. Yeah, I love that. I love the two engines driving the same thing, being like the creativity and the culture around the club and the games are like the two engines, right? Like the games are the team and the quality of play and the coaching and the tactics and everything. And then everything outside of that on either side of the 90 minutes is like the storytelling around that game, right?
Yeah, Yeah, it's just like I think it's just like soccer, I guess, like in this country and at this moment specifically is so like lends itself to this idea so well. I think again, going back, part of what attracted me to this game was like um yeah, like just like the way you can put your hands on it and like be a part of shaping it. Like growing up being a fan, I know I am still very much a fan of American sports, like, but I like they make you feel like you're watching from miles away.
Yeah.
Whereas like growing the game, especially at this amateur level, this lower division level, whatever, wherever up and down the pyramid you want to be, it really makes you feel like you've got like the hammer in your hand, like you're
Yeah.
building. Whether like obviously, you know, in a lucky enough to be able to actually be building a club in the way we are, but even from like a fan perspective and people just being involved in the game, it's just like you actually get to shape the game with your own hands and sort of build it in the image that these communities want. And I think that is what's so attractive about soccer specifically right now in this country.
Yeah, no, I love that. I think there's something you said about, well, there's a bunch of things you said. Building a club sort of in the image of the community and for a community is something I really relate to also. And I want to go into the sort of like specific vibe that you've developed and built. And vibe is a very like kind of trite word to use for what y'all do, but I think I do want to go into that really specifically. But I'm also curious in your like purely storytelling career, right? Like at Copa 90, what are some of the stories that, you still remember so vividly or really like filled you up with more gas, right? Like what got you really like excited about the future of the game here in America or in general? Like, I'm just curious to hear that sort of inside storyteller perspective of things a little bit.
Yeah, and I always love talking like Copa 90. My time at Copa 90 feels like a blur sometimes. So like I do love like kind of going back and thinking about that because when I when I describe some of the projects we worked on, I'm sometimes like, did we actually do that or was that like something like I made up? But to answer your question, I again was very fortunate and very grateful to have the opportunities I had at Copa 90 to tell these stories, and there were obviously some really cool ones that were were quite big undertakings. Like we had the Origin series where we were visiting the hometowns of like big players, Messi, Ronaldo, De Bruyne, Chicharito. And those were really cool because I got to like get close to sort of these titans of the game, and I think I really cherish those. But I think as much as like I loved those projects and like, I think they were like sort of the heavy hitters for the brand.
Those are the headlines, big text.
I think what I really like fell in love with and what like was really kind of drove me personally was like telling fan stories, especially, in the US and Canada. And I think my first one of my first projects like being on camera there was um we sort of did like a rivalry story, and it was in I think we worked closely with MLS to do this, but it was um Toronto and Montreal had met in the playoffs, and we just sort of broke down the entire rivalry between those two clubs, Montreal Impact and Toronto FC, but also broke down like the cultural rivalry between those two cities in general. And I really valued telling that story, obviously, because one, I met some really awesome people that continue to be friends of ours, especially in Montreal. Two met amazing people in Toronto as well, but Montreal's an hour and a half north of here, and
Yeah.
there's a side story there where we, because I worked on this documentary and made so many friends in Montreal, the very first Vermont Green FC game, like 50, maybe 50, 60, 70, ultras from Montreal came to our first game and like really set the tone for our atmosphere. And the sort of signature song at Vermont Green games that our fans sing was one that those ultras like brought to us in that first game.
Oh,
It's like it's like a cultural item
what a
yeah,
poetic. I love that.
yeah. I think like people don't know that as much, and even like within our own scene, like it's a really cool connection we've had with the Montreal soccer scene in a general sense. But anyway, to answer your question, yeah, like the to be able to tell that story and to be able to like help or at least advance the validation of like these football communities in our backyard, and in a way, like, not that they needed our legitimizing, but to help legitimize these like rivalries as like really authentic, like really passionate things. And I think like even in the landscape of Major League Soccer and soccer on this continent, like I don't think Toronto and Montreal like still gets the credit it deserves for like how intense it is. And so that's just one example. You know, we were able to tell stories kind of all over the country. I did find myself like I took us I took like a lot of pride and the kind of responsibility in telling those fan stories. I think it was so crucial to the growth of the game here.
Yeah, absolutely. And I have a background working at the Chicago Fire for a while, and my introduction to working in at MLS was through a newly formed supporter relations department that I was, forced into. I stepped into at the Chicago Fire at a time that was like very challenging role, right? But like the immediate thing I was hit with in that environment was just like, oh, this is wildly culturally relevant and important to this club. Like this really, really matters in a way that I didn't really understand fully until I was like right in the middle of it.
Totally. And there's so much like I just to add on to that quickly, it's just like I feel like American soccer spends so much time like questioning its legitimacy and questioning its authenticity. And I think there's a lot of validity to that at times. Like we, sometimes are stumbling all over ourselves. But I think there's also a ton of it's like really quite authentic and frankly cool stories happening in American supporter culture that I think are just worth telling on their own. And it's not like to be compared to Europe or South America. It's like finding their authenticity in their own right. And that was just cool.
Yeah, absolutely. I also like the fact that it's all still kind of like it's not set yet. It's like still magma. So like there's no way of telling where it will end up at this point, which is also very cool, is that it's like a pretty young culture altogether, Even the oldest clubs in the country, well, the oldest clubs in the country are pretty freaking old, but like the oldest first division pro clubs are pretty not that old. So yeah. Sweet. I do now want to take a slight tangent and shift into Vermont Green specifically and talk about how did y'all do this? How do you manage to kind of thread the needle of being an incredibly good product on the field and really successful on the field, obviously with the national championship, kudos again. How have y'all been able to do that and also maintain this very crucial and very community-based and seemingly community-inspiring series of values that you have so effectively? In 10 seconds or less.
Yeah, I'll need more than that because, but yeah, it's so like, yeah, I think people have asked this question quite a bit, and I do really, I mean, I don't just believe, I'm certain that these things it's a circular thing. Like
Yeah.
we built a culture and an identity, a visual identity with Matthew and Matthew Wolf, and alongside Sam Glickman and myself, we've built this sort of community-driven club that has this look and feel that is, we believe that it is representative of Vermonters. It's something that people here care about. It's something that just reflects the values of the community, and also just is a fun thing to do in its own right. And we think that idea, and sort of like, we talk about the trajectory of our team doing well, and our coaches will say this as well. Like initially it was like we had to sell a vision in year one. So like trying to attract good players, which, we did in the first year. But with each season and more proof of concept and more community building, like good players want to play in this atmosphere, and this atmosphere is attracted to good players, and these things can feed each other forever. And I think, I think like I could talk forever about, just what we're trying to do and the trial and error and how this kind of works in community building. But yeah, like from the sporting side, our sporting director, Adam Pfeiffer, our head coach, Chris Taylor, are some of the best in the business at this
Yeah.
level. I mean, I would argue that they are the best, at least at this moment. They're
Wouldn't be that tough to argue at this point. Well,
they they yeah they the teams they built, the relationships they've built with the college programs, with the college athletes themselves, and also just I think building a playing style that is attractive and good, but also one that we're like in itself, like there's so much theory and science and into like, how these coaches decide to play. And they have, Chris has been on podcasts himself talking about how like the way they want to play and the way they want to look and the way they are, the way they're building these teams are also reflective of the community in their own ways. And knowing that what they're playing for, it's not just lip service. Like these guys are playing with a purpose and with a, responsibility to people. And I think those things, again, they feed each other eternally. So a good community attracts good players strengthen the community. And it's just, hoping to build those bricks forever. So,
yeah, no, I'm just going to take a couple quick notes here. No, that makes a ton of sense, man. And like, clearly y'all have made it work. Like the last 4 years, we were talking about this before the episode began, but you haven't really lost a lot of games. You've won a ton of games, right? Like you were founded in 2022 in USL, and since then you've lost 9 games.
Yeah, is that right?
Yeah.
It's it's been, and look, USL2 is a competitive league, and we firmly believe we are in the most competitive division in a very competitive league. Like, the national champions the year before us, Seacoast United from our division.
Yep.
And then there's a club called Western Mass Pioneers who are just perennial contenders. They're always good. They're often in the Open Cup. They're just a great club, and that's just like kind of the 3 at the top. We've got like, BlackRock who are good. They've developed players like Jack Harrison. And then you've got NEFC, like just a huge youth club in Massachusetts that has connections with the Revs. Like it's just a division full of competition, and that's just the 9 teams in our turf. We won the championship in a league that has 144 teams, and obviously there's levels to it. There's a range. Some clubs are not performing as well as others, but I think there's just so much talent, and there's such a great relationship with USL2 and the NCAA programs that it's really like I think at times, like I think people don't realize like how good of a product you can find in USL2. And again, it's not every game. I mean, I think every game is worth watching, but like I'm saying that like towards the top level of the obviously very proud of what our club has achieved, but the Ballards and the the Lionsbridge and the Dothans, and I could list another dozen clubs that are full of highly competitive future pros, NCAA top players, and it's really cool. And it's still, I think, somehow an underrated league, just in how if you're like a lover of the game, if you love football, like it's like you can watch serious talent. And it's like, because people are often asking us about how does it stack with USL 1, and I'm not on the sporting side, I wouldn't be the best guy to ask about this, but it's like, yeah, sure, like a USL 1 team I think has the edge on a team like ours because of experience and things like that. But
sure,
if you're just stacking raw like talent, like our teams are just a bit younger, but from a talent level, like the ceiling for some of the guys in USL 2 might be high, like much higher than USL 1. So there's like a sort of blip in the pyramid when you look at you at the top level of USL 2. And from the talent perspective, there's just so much in this league.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm glad you started, shifting into that a little bit, because I wanted to ask you, like, what exactly is it about USL that felt like the right destination for y'all when you were starting the club in 2022? I know Matt a little bit, and I was so excited to see this come to fruition when it did, and like the branding's so good, obviously, and like y'all have a bunch of stuff figured out early, but why was that sort of the right choice at the time, and like how's that gone?
Yeah, transparently, when we started the club, we were league irreverent, as we call it. Like we really just like we wanted to build the right club in the right league for this community. And I think like that's something we can go into. Like I think a big point of advice I give to any club starting is just like don't try to overthink outside of your community, honestly. Like, there's always going to be a place to play. There's always going to be a league. Like, with that said, we looked at all options, and for us, USL League Two was I think by a good margin, like the best option for us. One of the biggest pulls for that was, our sporting director, who was our head coach in the first 3 years, Adam Pfeiffer. He played in this league when it was the PDL. He won the national championship as a player in 2002. Sorry, Adam. 2002, 2003.
I was like, how is he doing both at the same time? That's so impressive.
And he really advocated, this is where the best players want to play. This is where the best players are. And so our relationship with USL 2 and USL as a full entity has been, fantastic since the start. And we're super pleased, super happy. They're very supportive of us. They're very, open to our sort of unorthodox approach to many things on like match day and just in general. They do they allow us to be ourselves, which is really, really important for a club like ours. And and from the sporting side, like, it's just, I think it's the place to place the top talent and the most attractive product. And so that's how we ended up in USL 2. And I also just think in a general sense, like, we're looking at the ecosystem that USL is building, the pro ladder, what's coming down the line, and sort of where U.S. soccer is in general in relationship with all of its leagues, and we're happy to be members of USL. And like I said, I think league irreverence is important to a degree for all sort of decisions, but so far it's like we've looked at USL and we're super pleased.
Totally. I love the phrase league irreverent. I think that's beautiful.
I just have watched too much ideology be tied to leagues and not clubs, and it's like, again, I don't mean, like, I would hate for this to come off as like we don't care about the league. We do care. We're proud members of USL, but I think that, like, you always need to just remember that, like, leagues will be all over the place, and so
Acorns makes it easy to start investing for you, your kids, and your retirement. Now, they want to make it easy to attend Edgewater Castle FC matches. Get 2026 season tickets when you sign up and start investing today at acorns.com/ECFC. Investment advisory products and services offered by Acorns Advisors, LLC, an SEC-registered investment advisor.
Eight years ago, we were just an idea, a distant dream for togetherness, joy, and triumph. We did not inherit a dynasty. We did not arrive with airdropped riches and fanfare. We began with a foundation of belief and a shared commitment to build something authentic, something necessary. We're building this club the only way we know how, stone by stone, brick by brick, goal after goal after goal. Now the foundation is set. The structure's sound. We can hear the music of the side streets and the rhythm of Lake Michigan as we give our community more Chicago to root for. Which is why we're proud to announce, for the 2026 season, Edgewater Castle Football Club officially enters the national stage, USL League Two and USLW League. We built together. Now we climb together. Onward and upward, always.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to Stone by Stone. I am still your host, Andrew Swanson, and I'm still very grateful to be joined here by co-founder of Vermont Green FC, Patrick Infurna. Patrick, thank you for still being on the call with us today.
I'm very stoked to still be here with the train shift.
Yeah, absolutely. Environs are shifting back and forth, and shape-shifting environments. Cool. So we're going to pick up where we left off a little bit, talking about the USL, and shift a little more into just like the U.S. soccer landscape in general. I used a word earlier, which I use too often now, which is like, I describe it as kind of still magma. It's like not fully set yet. and may take a decade or more to do that. So like, what's your sort of vibe on where the ecosystem that we're operating our clubs in is at the moment?
Yeah, I mean, it's like such a good question. I think there's maybe many answers, or at least a very broad answer to that. And I think I sort of touched on this earlier about like the approach. We feel that I have a lot of thoughts on U.S. soccer and where it's at, and I a lot of thoughts on USL and all of these things. And I think that there's a big way for clubs like ours to contribute to that bigger picture. But I think like we're also most effective by just solidifying what we are, where we are. And I think that's like really been a big approach for us, is like that, because the landscape of the leagues and how the leagues are interacting with each other and how the federations interact with the leagues, like if you get too hung up in all of that, like you're either going to be discouraged or destroyed somehow. And I think that's one angle. But I also think in a general sense, the sort of glass half full angle of that is I think like U.S. soccer as a concept, not the federation, is in a really awesome spot. I think and the federation's probably fine too. That wasn't a diss at them.
Yeah. They're involved.
I think there's a reason we're seeing teams popping up everywhere. There's a reason we're seeing interest growing, basically at all levels of the pyramid, and also in women's soccer and in the pyramid for women's soccer as well. There's a reason that I think that people are becoming obsessed with this game and falling in love with it. And I think that is that we're in a really cool moment. And I think the biggest thing that I would encourage anyone to do is like, again, love the game in the way that you want to, but there's just nothing cooler than making the team in your neighborhood or city or state or wherever it may be, making it yours and making other people want to be there as well. Like, it's just like, it's an interesting moment. I think, like leaning back to the maybe glass half empty, like there's going to be times where it feels volatile and you see clubs folding all of the time, and those stories kind of get blown up. Maybe it's not out of proportion, but they get blown up. And I think it's just like the health of the game is really just going to depend on people deciding that it matters. And so, bit of a roundabout answer there. I don't know if I was so honed in.
No, that was great. I mean, it sort of feels like the health of the game kind of relies on the health of the clubs more so than the health of the leagues in a way, right? And that leagues are crucial, but
yeah.
Nice. I'm gonna put that.
And I think just I think in a general sense, like I just there are times where we see expansions that seem a bit wild at times, like in places that seem like it's tough, because I think like our success in Burlington, Vermont, is one reason I would never judge a team popping up anywhere. Like I bet people had the same thought when we popped up. But it's I just think like a lot of this comes down to the intentions of the people running the club as well. Like there's people in it for different reasons. Obviously we like our approach, we like our model. There's a lot of people that are more interested maybe in real estate. They're more interested in parts of the game that exists at the professional level. And I think, every community and every club and every, ownership group is going to have their approach. But I think, I guess in a general sense, it's exciting to see so many clubs popping up. And I think that as we go, the landscape will also refine, and the right clubs will be in the right place. And hopefully the communities in every individual place will continue to grow, mostly so we can hopefully get more regionalized at the pro level. That's a whole other thing. But
yeah, of course, big country we got here. Wow, it's big. Yeah, and even for y'all, playing in a national championship, right? That's a genuinely coast to coast game, and that's a big country. That's a big amount of miles between these two teams. So I think I love talking to clubs who are making it to that level in League Two and playing those teams that are from so far away, and like having to, y'all hosted obviously, which we could probably have a whole podcast about just the 24 hours of that game, which we don't have time for. But yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense. I also want to talk to you as someone who is, and we do have sort of like a thing to mention at the end of the episode, so I'm going to save time for that and not go over. But as someone who is, running a club in a place where there's not World Cup games, the U.S. is what it is at the moment. And, in cities like Chicago, it's a very crazy time, especially for people coming from other countries. In terms of just what the World Cup kind of means to soccer, right? And means to the creative and cultural and like kind of dream building side of the game, it's sort of the most important thing, right? But given that, we're in places where it's not taking place, so there's that, but we definitely want to be a part of that celebration, I'd say. I guess what are you excited about, and what are you kind of like either meh or not excited about in the preparation for that World Cup? And I admit I come from a pretty biased perspective being in the city of Chicago right now in that regard.
Yeah, I think this is a great question. I think that I, in a way, have been putting off a little bit, like from a personal standpoint, like thinking about the World Cup. For one, like, our season will run through the World Cup. We'll be playing just like we'll be playing every 3 days through the World Cup. And I think, looking at the positives first, I think you're exactly right. I think we're still living in the aftermath of the '94 World Cup. I think we're still living. We're like, what we're all doing right now is still like running on the last fumes of that World Cup, and I think that's can't be discounted. Like, I think these World Cups, they change countries from a soccer perspective, soccer culture perspective. I think that there's a lot that we're going to get from this. It's going to strengthen our leagues. Like, there's money around, there's investment, there's sponsorship, there's people thinking about the game in just completely different ways that is just going to be, it's inevitably going to be a massive benefit to what we're all doing sort of at the grassroots level and up through the pro ranks. I think at the same time, and this is me speaking, like less like speaking for the club, which is going to be forming its own sort of perspective on this, because we were a little bit skeptical of the last World Cup, and I think in general, like, it's just that time to be quite skeptical of FIFA and their intentions and how these things operate at the highest kind of pinnacle of what they're doing. But it's equally hard. It's equally impossible to deny just how magic these World Cups are. Like, and that's like, for better or worse. Like, I was expecting the last Qatar World Cup to be a disaster. Like, from a football perspective, it wasn't a disaster. It was quite entertaining, and people seemed to enjoy it, and all that. And I know it had its issues. I'm not absolving that, but I'm mostly just trying to say that I think while me personally and our club, and I think even our fans and community, are feeling a bit of skepticism towards all of this, just the state of the country at the moment and the state of our countries and what our country is in the national sense, in the national or international community. It's hard to picture this like going well. It's hard to picture this being safe at times. Like, so let me be more concise about this. We're excited for the injection of love and soccer, and we're skeptical about what is sort of signified in the non-soccer world through this tournament. And I think the balancing act. And I think we will be able to take the good with the bad. And I think one sort of very Vermont solution to this, again, coming back to our community, how we engage with something just based on that, is that I think a lot of people are feeling this way. And I think our fans of our club can express that through our local club, through Vermont Green in the stands, and just by gathering to watch the World Cup in the ways that they do or don't. But yeah, I I'm trying to make sure I'm giving you a concise answer, because I don't know if I have a great concise answer yet.
It's not a great prompt for a concise answer. I'll say it's a little bit of a non-concise topic. So you've done amazing.
It's complicated.
It is. It's complicated times we live in, and yeah, I mean, I think you're 100% right in that. Regardless, it is one of these things that is sort of so big, and so important culturally to literally the entire world that, you know, it's very difficult to separate. It's very difficult to separate, you know, what it means culturally from the things that we wish were different about who runs it and how and so on, right? Like there's just a lot of difficulty in making those full like cleaves of ideas, but like you said, the balancing act is just like where we're going to be walking for the next year or so. Very true. Yeah, absolutely. I do have another question for you. I have to read this one because it's a little detailed. When it comes to like fan experience, how have y'all done such, I'm trying to phrase this correctly. When it comes to like fan experience and like building the sort of lore around your club, right, which has grown over the last several years with your community, how has the fan experience really like contributed to that on game days, I guess? And like obviously there's artwork and there's creativity behind that, but what is the sort of main thing that you focus on in terms of your game days and like getting people to want to come back?
Yeah, I mean, it's funny because it was this season where, you know, we've had a like pretty constant formula, which is just that like we want our games to be open and fun. Obviously, like the sort of the basics of what makes someone come out to a sporting event. And then there's the things that are very like Vermont culture. Like we have free Ben and Jerry's ice cream at every game. You get a little scoop, but trust me, that moves the needle. And then I think also just like a general sense, like what we're trying to make our match days be in the big picture, like, you know, sort of like most boiled down ethos of what Vermont Green is that like we've got this community driven environmental justice approach to everything, and we just like don't really think we should be doing anything without like that being mentioned. And so like, you know, when you walk into the stadium, before you get to the stands or before you get to the food trucks, you're going to go past like tabling nonprofits and community members and people talking about things that are important to them. And I think we have just always prioritized that our fan culture should just be like always irreversibly intertwined with like what our community is, what they care about, you know, like what's like we framed it like, you know, why would we, I think a lot of times in sports, people want to frame it as like, this is where I go to get away from my problems. This is where I go to like ignore real life. And I think that's fine if that's what you want.
Sure.
But we've been very intentional. That's like, that's not what we want. We want to go to the stadium. We want to be with our friends and family at the stadium as a way to like recharge our batteries for caring about what's going on outside of the game. And not just recharge our batteries, but just like propel us into action. Like I think this is, you know, all to answer your question of how to keep fans engaged and how to what is about the fan experience. And it's like, I think one of the best examples happened this summer, which is that we as a club, alongside Sam Lewis with our women's team, we auctioned off one of her game worn US women's national team jerseys to raise money for the Vermont Immigration Legal Defense Fund. You know, raising money on behalf of, you know, people facing detainment, and that was like, it was a cool thing, and we raised like $6,000 or something. It was really awesome. We were really proud of it as a club. But then our fans, and this is like, I think again, this is ultimately the biggest proof of concept for what Vermont Green wants to be in a bigger picture. Our fans said like, cool. And they took it and they ran with it and they raised $25,000. And it's like, for us, it's like, wow, like we have to run the club, we have to take care of our players, we have to deal with vendors, and we have a million things to do as a club to make sure this thing is going. So like, we
And
believe
your
in our
fans were like, we got you.
like we believe what our club should be doing and saying and trying and like doing our best to be. But ultimately, like, it's movements, not like clubs, that are going to make, like, club capital C, everyone involved with the club is what's going to make things like actually happen and make an impact. Not to say that we're not making an impact. I'm just saying that like we want to inspire a movement, not just like be a small business that's making things happen. So, and to loop all the way back around and actually answer your question, I think that sort of fan engagement, fan involvement, and the way, going back to the first question of like fans being able to put their hands on this club and like shape it in a way that they want to, that is like what's attractive. Like giving the fans the freedom to express themselves makes them want to come back. It's not just like, oh, I paid for a ticket, I watched the game, I ate some food, and like it's not like just a experience of consumption, it's an experience of community. I think that's like the 101 for us.
Man, you just put so many gems in there. Got to get a whole new collection of blank t-shirts to get all that written on them. Man, thank you so much. This has been amazing. Thank you for giving us a little extra time also. I would like to take this moment to let you, before basically anyone else, not that the audience has any idea when we record these, but by the time this comes out, it will be known that Edgewater Castle FC is going to be joining Vermont Green in USL 2 and USL League W next year. Yeah, so we're officially making that jump starting in the spring. So we're you just gave me all your secrets, you dummy. Now I got all your secrets. But no, man.
They're gonna think you joined USL League Two and during the ad break there.
Yeah, they are. Yeah, we went out to file all the paperwork. It took no time at all.
But let me say congratulations and welcome. And that's, yes, awesome. What division is that gonna be?
We're gonna be Heartland.
Like, will you play with Minneapolis City and stuff?
Yeah.
No.
So
sweet, yeah. Dude. That's incredible. Like I said, it was a blind test earlier. I believe.
Yeah, I know, man.
It's a good league. It's a good league, and yeah, it's gonna elevate your club, and it's gonna elevate the fan experience, and I'm excited for you all, and stay in touch about that, because if we can be helpful in any way, we obviously will.
Definitely,
that is awesome.
It's a Pandora's box you've just opened, but yeah, we will stay in touch, I'm sure. But yeah, so you're the first to know. You're the first to know on the East Coast, at least. But obviously this is, what is it, Wednesday the 12th today? Today's Wednesday the 12th when the audience is hearing this. So it might be slightly old news by that point. But I do, again, Patrick, I want to just say thank you for being here, for like sharing your story with us, and for being such a great and part of such a great inspiring story for soccer right now, that I think really people locally here, just in the US and part of smaller communities, like, it means the world to see a club like Vermont succeed in the way y'all have in the last few years, and to see the growth and the hard work and the like commitment to ideals. And that's been super inspiring for us, and has set a really strong example for other clubs around the country. So I just want to say thanks to you and the other founders. And yeah, it was a really like just so fun to watch y'all play last year also. So yeah, hopefully we'll meet each other in the postseason in 26, maybe. Who knows?
Yeah, I really appreciate those kind words. We're obviously really proud of this, and proud of this community, and it's been a joint effort, and yeah, so thank you for that. And yeah, we will definitely be in touch. We're in the same league. Yeah, it would be very cool to play.
It would. I mean, we gotta eventually, one way or another, friendly or preseason or otherwise, we'll figure it out. But
yeah, I was gonna say you should come up to a game sometime, but now that you're operating a USL 2 club, I'm certain that you will have no time to do that.
It will be very challenging, I'm sure. But this will be not the last of our conversations. But yeah, man, I'm just so grateful for you to come on a a night like this one and be on the show. So thank you so much, and it's meant a lot to talk to you. So thanks.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
Absolutely. Have a great rest of your night, and ladies and gentlemen, thank you for joining us for another episode of Stone by Stone. I've been joined here by my newest friend, Patrick Infurna of Vermont Green FC, and hope you check them out and everything that they're up to. And we will see you next time. Thank you so much.